House Corbin took Mortarborn, but lost a few mechs in the attack. In fact, they would have lost more if the Chupacabras rolled better with their fire lance. Sometimes luck is on your side, but for how long? House Corbin was in a bit of a conundrum. Due to overconfidence, House Corbin requested very few reinforcements, instead opting for enhancing their existing mech warriors and saving up their victory points to force the League into negotiations. However, the defense of South Azure was a blunder, and House Corbin's forces suffered greatly. Their reinforcements have arrived, but it is not enough to turn the tide. In fact, it would be best for House Corbin to stall the conflict out until the third phase of the war, so they could receive even more reinforcements. South Azure is in the hands of the League, which means the League is preventing House Corbin from earning political points from the city. Does this mean the League is earning the political points from South Azure? Nope. The citizens of that city hate the League. By controlling the city, the League simply prevents everyone from earning political points from South Azure. But you know what? Because House Corbin destroyed the starport, let's just say that Baron Bishop Corbin is not a very popular guy. Which is ironic. When setting up this campaign, the players played a few sessions of Mech Warrior Destiny RPG game, where the players were running a political campaign to earn the votes and support of the various cities of Blue Hole. And South Azure was the first to declare for House Corbin, and now the city is in ruins and falling into anarchy. Since House Corbin destroyed the starport, the League could not bring in a proper occupation force such as infantry and vehicles. Mechs are kings and queens of the battlefield, but pacifying a city is not within their expertise. The League cannot control the city with a handful of mechs, so the city became lawless, which made it possible for House Corbin to organize partisans to attempt terrorist attacks on the mechs inside the city. This caused 2 structural damage to the mechs there, which is unfortunate because the occupation force has limited supplies due to the destroyed starport. So the League abandoned the city of South Azure and massed their forces in and around Swinestone. The League was definitely experiencing buyer's remorse for taking over that city. Oh well, let's get back to the war in Landbridge, especially in the HQ of House Corbin. The players wanted to stall the war, try to avoid big engagements, unless of course the battles were for recapturing South Azure, but there were 2 binaries and a mech company isolated in that region. Attacking that was not ideal for House Corbin. It would make sense to strike in Landbridge, but honestly, House Corbin couldn't ignore the fact that one of their cities was captured by their enemy. How does one look like they are pushing their advantage in Landbridge, while at the same time preparing a counterattack in the south? Maybe it was time to dust off the Operation Conveyor Belt of Doom? Sort of. Instead, they are adopting the strategy of fake it till we make it. The League believes House Corbin has a lot of reinforcements. To keep that ruse going, House Corbin constantly launches and lands dropships in Blue Shore. In this campaign, anytime a dropship enters or leaves orbit, the enemy is notified. So this was a bit of psychological warfare against the League. House Corbin will attack into the Hazi Valley, but with minimum forces. He wants to appear danger close in the valley, while also seemingly abandoning South Azure to its enemy occupation. Remember the 9th and 10th Company that just took Mortarborn? Well, they pulled back, received repairs, and then moved to Elkingate, awaiting orders to push into South Azure area. What are they waiting for, you may ask? They are waiting for the binaries to start showing up in Western Theater of Reston and Hazi Valley. Once they do, then the 9th and 10th will attack south, hoping to liberate South Azure. If the binaries show back up in the south, then House Corbin will take action to look like they are threatening to take Reston. Don't forget, House Corbin has the war chest points to take a lot of actions. They just don't have a strong army. The League has a strong army, but not much resources to pay for logistics to move that army around. Eventually, the League will have to make a choice to either defend South Azure and risk Reston, or defend Reston but abandon South Azure. And this is exactly what House Corbin was trying to do. For an entire strategic turn, it appeared the strategy was working. The League fell for House Corbin's bluff and withdrew from a potential battle at Cinehelm, falling back into their tried and true strategy of Fort Ink Turtle. There were no battles for that strategic turn, but the 2 binaries were still in South Azure. House Corbin needed to step it up, so they adopted one of the pesky strategies of the Chupacabras. Using Aerodyne dropships, individual mech lances landed deep into League's territory to poke the bear, so to speak. They landed here and ran over there. They would land over there and run amok without really accomplishing anything. It really appeared to the League player that House Corbin had lost their mind. At one point, it looked like House Corbin was going to destroy Pentaby City's logistics hub, but withdrew once a relief force moved to intercept. Then they ran this way, heading towards Easter Alden City, until they were headed off by a few lances of tanks. They then evacuated via dropship. However, during one of these cat-and-mouse maneuvers, House Corbin received intelligence that the Lapiz power plant doesn't have air and space defense guns. Those weapons were deployed to South Azure. This was the opportunity House Corbin was waiting for. Without hesitation, they starborn assaulted a lance into the region to attack the garrisoned forces there. A little further to the east, House Corbin, still trying to maintain the illusion of a fake invasion, also pushed an attack into Galecombe. Those two attacks spooked the League, and they began to pull forces from the south. The first binary was picked up and dropped off in Galecombe as reinforcements. The 7th Light Cav was also picked up and is in flight to reinforce the Lapiz power plant. Both attacks are happening simultaneously, but since the power plant was the first to be declared, we will resolve that battle first. This is the Battle of Lapiz Power Plant. Welcome to the Lapiz Power Plant. It is one of the 2 major power production facilities on the planet. It is nearly ancient technology to most, but the plant seems to run itself for the most part. It provides tremendous economic value to the players who control it. In terms of victory points, economic points are more valuable to the Alyina Mercantile League than they are to House Corbin and the Vesper Marches. However, House Corbin has lost a lot of credibility amongst the citizens of Blueshore when he ordered the destruction of the starport in South Azure. So, for him to completely destroy a power plant, even one controlled by his enemy, it would also hurt him politically with the locals. But, if he could critically damage the power plant, it would reduce the economic points for the League, and at the same time smooth things over with locals, and maybe keep his head on his shoulders a little longer. So, how does one critically damage an ancient power plant without causing a meltdown and a massive catastrophe? There are 3 parts to this power plant: the main facility and 2 cooling towers. Any damage to the main facility risks damaging or destroying the reactor. House Corbin wants to avoid that at all cost. If both cooling towers are destroyed, this could cause the reactor to fail to cool, and a chain reaction will occur that will also destroy the facility. But take out one cooling tower will do the trick. The problem is, these buildings were built a long time ago, and built well. They are hardened structures, with a construction factor of 8. Seems like an easy task for an Alpha Strike battle mech. Since we are using only a few lances of mechs, we will be using the pilot dice damage, in which 1 die is rolled to represent the pilot's ability, then 1 additional die is rolled to represent each point of damage. However, we only allow 1 critical damage per shooting, and any rerolls will only affect the pilot die. House Corbin will be starborn assaulting the power plant via Aerodyne dropship. There are only 2 potential landing zones just south of the power plant. If for any reason these landing zones are blocked, there is an additional landing zone to the west, but it would require the player to use our house rules for reinforcement, requiring a roll of a 12 to arrive to or from that location. House Corbin wants ultimate surprise, so he will land at this landing zone. House Corbin is attacking with a single lance called Strike Force 2, since the mechs were thrown together for this ad hoc special mission. It is comprised of a Jenner, a Centurion, and a pair of Warhammers. All the mech warriors are regular skill. House Corbin finally has mech warriors who know how to operate a battle mech. We're so proud of them. The power plant has a garrison troops located at the power plant, part of the initial security package contracted to Hefe's Chupacabra's mercenary force long before the war kicked off. It is comprised of 4 urban mechs each with their own unique variation. There is also a mechanized security that patrol around in 2 scout vehicles. The mech warriors and the vehicle crews are all regular. The power plant facility also has 2 security towers that are each equipped with a defensive laser turret. Breaking through the atmosphere of Blue Hole as fast as possible is the 7th Light Cav. It is comprised of a Mad Cat, a Phoenix Hawk, a Fenris, and a Crusader as a replacement mech for the downed Big Red. The Mad Cat had sustained a bit of damage to its armor in a previous battle. All the armor save 1 point of damage has been repaired before this battle took place. The Mad Cat and the little blue Phoenix Hawk are both veterans. The 7th Light Cav will arrive on turn 4 via Aerodyne dropship. House Corbin suspects a dropship is inbound for this battle, but has no idea what is on board the dropship. House Corbin could easily be overwhelmed by the Chupacabras in this battle, so they will want to move quick and take down their target as soon as possible. But they still have time to give a special thanks to all the Patreon supporters and nobles of the channel. Thank you for your continued support. Now, let's get into the battle. House Corbin has the initiative, so the Chupacabras will need to move and shoot first. As you heard, the proximity alarm has gone off, and the security detail only has a few moments to prepare. Since they are caught off guard, they can only activate 1 unit this turn. They decide to prioritize their urban mechs, leaving the patrol and defense towers to activate over the next 2 turns. After checking that their computers, sensors, and weapons were online, as well as all their systems were nominal, the urban mechs began to file out of the motor pool. Urban mechs are not known for their speed. They sort of waddle around the battlefield with only a few inches of movement. They knew where the potential landing zones were located, and they suspected the enemy would land at the LZ closest to the power plant. So, they waddle sprinted or jumped towards cover of that hill and mansion. With the sudden roar of engines above, the dropship arrived carrying House Corbin's strike force to the battlefield. The hatches open and the mechs move down the ramps onto the battlefield. The Jenner and Centurion move into cover behind the raised highway, and the 2 Warhammers move towards the urban mechs, who are surprised that they landed at that LZ and not the closer one. This left the urban mechs in the open and exposed. That takes us to the shooting phase, and the Chupacabras shoot first, but they only have 1 urban mech that is able to open fire. Because the mech jumped and the raised highway was providing some cover, the target number was a 10, and all the shots missed. House Corbin returns fire. It turns out that the Jenner doesn't have line of sight and is out of range. That leaves the Centurion to engage at long range and the 2 Warhammers at medium range. They all fire at Urban Mech 93, who has a TMM of 0 because it is basically a walking trash can. The Centurion missed, but the 2 Warhammers hit with 7 damage, stripping the urban mech's armor away and damaging its structure by 1 point. This caused a critical check, which was an 8, weapon destroyed. That brings turn 1 to a close. The Chupacabra security wrongly guessed which LZ House Corbin would land upon. House Corbin arrived via dropship and has already critically damaged one of the urban mechs guarding the power plant. The 7th Light Cav is scheduled to arrive in turn 4 via dropship. Here we are in turn 2. The dropship immediately blasts off to a holding pattern in low orbit, waiting to be recalled for pickup, which once the player does, will have a delay of 1 turn. House Corbin won initiative again, so the Chupacabras will need to move and shoot first. Since we are in turn 2, the Chupacabras can now activate another unit in addition to their urban mechs. The player decides to activate her patrol, which is comprised of 2 wheeled scouts. The Urban Mech 80 waddles around the mansion to make space for Urban Mech 93 to jump into cover. The other 2 Urban Mechs jump to give them slightly better TMM while standing in the open. For proportional movement, the patrol activates, and since they are wheeled vehicles, they can move an additional 2 inches of movement since their entire movement was on pavement. House Corbin can now move their strike force. House Corbin suspects that the League has an inbound dropship, so they want to control both landing zones, and therefore force the League to land on the western approaches, thus further delaying their reinforcements' arrival. They have no idea when the enemy's reinforcements will arrive, so they task the Centurion to hold the Co-op Farms LZ by moving into cover of the farmhouses. The Jenner moves behind cover of those woods, while at the same time controlling the other landing zone to prevent reinforcements from landing there. The Warhammers move up to the raised highway in order to have cover from the urban mechs. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. All the urban mechs and the patrol can see the red Warhammer, and they open fire. The target number ranged between 8 and 10. 2 urban mechs and both wheeled scouts hit, dealing 4 damage to the Warhammer's armor. House Corbin returns fire. The pair of Warhammers identified the Urban Mech 70 to be the most lethal. Both Warhammers nailed their target, dealing 7 damage, which is enough to destroy the mech. The Centurion just barely had line of sight on the severely damaged Urban Mech 93. The Centurion attacked at long range with a target number of 10, and both shots missed. Next, the Jenner had Urban Mech 69 standing in the open. The target number was an 8, and out of the 3 attack rolls, only 1 hit, taking 1 damage off the Urban Mech's armor. And that brings turn 2 to a close. House Corbin has destroyed 1 Urban Mech, and another is severely damaged. They also control both landing zones, at least for now. The Chupacabras, despite their intense focused shooting, were only able to damage the armor of one of the Warhammers. As for the power plant, it is still fully intact and operational. Let's see what turn 3 has in store for us. In turn 3, the defense garrison is completely online. Therefore, the defense towers will be able to shoot during this turn's shooting phase. The Chupacabras won initiative, so House Corbin's forces will move and shoot first. The House Corbin player began to consider his options. The 2 Warhammers are deadly at medium and close range. They are currently at long range to the cooling towers, but the Chupacabras are closing on his position. The player is also concerned the 2 wheeled scouts will try to get in behind his Warhammers and do some damage to the mech's rear arcs. He decides to move the red Warhammer back along the road and tucked into cover behind those woods. From that location, it can cover the purple Warhammer's rear arc. The purple Warhammer then moves along the raised highway, maintaining his cover while moving closer to the Chupacabras and to his ultimate target, the cooling towers. The Jenner and Centurion, both enjoying good positions with excellent cover, stand still. This lowers their TMM, but improves their shooting. The Chupacabras can now move, and they recognize that the Jenner is blocking the landing zone just south of the manor. But with their poor damage outputs, there is nothing they can do about it. So they stand still, so that they can at least try to help take down the purple Warhammer. As for Urban Mech 69, it moves in behind the defense tower for some cover from the Jenner, kicking that truck out of its way. As for the wheeled scout patrol, they move right up to short range of the purple Warhammer. Their TMM is better than the Urban Mechs, so they stand a better chance to survive if the Jenner opens fire on them. This brings us to the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first. The Centurion attempts to shoot at the severely damaged Urban Mech again. This time its target number is a 9 since the Centurion had stood still, and again, both shots missed. The Jenner could either attack a defense turret with a target number of 6 or attack the patrol-wheeled scout with a target number of 9. Both have the same damage output. So the player decides to open fire on the tower to at least remove it from the battle. The Jenner nailed it, dealing 2 damage, destroying the tower. However, the tower will be able to still shoot back this turn. The 2 Warhammers take aim at Urban Mech 69 hanging just on the other side of the raised highway. The target number was 7 for purple and a 10 for red. Red missed, but the purple Warhammer dealt 3 damage to the Urban Mech, which removed the last 2 points of armor it had and dealt 1 structural damage. This also dealt critical damage to its movement, slowing the already slow mech to only 2 inches of movement. The Chupacabras shoot back, and all the Urban Mechs, wheeled scouts, and the 2 towers fire at the purple Warhammer. Target numbers were all over the place, but ultimately, only the 2 wheeled scouts and 1 Urban Mech hit, dealing 3 damage to the Warhammer's armor. With shooting complete, this brings turn 3 to a close. House Corbin still controls both landing fields, and the Chupacabra player has already resigned to the fact that they will need to land their reinforcements in the west approaches and run on to the battlefield. House Corbin's strike force is still fighting strong, though both Warhammers have taken a few dings in their armor. The Chupacabras have lost an Urban Mech, a defense tower, and 1 Urban Mech has taken a beating. The power plant, on the other hand, has still not taken any damage. Turn 4 starts with the roar of the Aerodyne dropship above. House Corbin's suspicion was correct, and that an enemy dropship was inbound to this battle. Luckily, he was controlling the landing zones, forcing the 7th Light Cav to land at the alternate landing zone in the western approaches. This means the west side of the map will soon have an enemy force closing on him. Deep down, he hopes it is one of the clan stars. However, they will have to wait to find out. House Corbin's objective, one of the cooling towers, is still standing, and the enemy is closing in. The Chupacabras won initiative. House Corbin will need to move and shoot first. The strike force needs to stop bothering with the defenders and target the cooling tower. He designates this landing zone for his pickup site, but he isn't calling his dropship down yet. He is concerned it will take unnecessary damage if it is just sitting on the battlefield. The Jenner, however, stands still, so House Corbin can maintain control of that landing field. The Purple Warhammer also stands still since it is in cover and within medium range of the cooling tower. Since the enemy's reinforcements is in the process of unloading in the west approaches, the Centurion no longer needs to babysit the landing zone, so the mech advances forward. The Red Warhammer also advances to get closer to the cooling tower and extraction zone. The Chupacabras can now move. The entire force for the Chupacabras stands still. They realize that House Corbin is aware of the approaching reinforcements and are likely going for a Hail Mary to destroy the power plant. That means her security detail will not be targeted, so might as well stand still to improve their shooting and take down some enemy mechs. This brings us to the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first. The Jenner was unfortunately out of range of the cooling tower, so instead fired at the urban mech. The target number was a 6, but only one shot hit, damaging the structure of the urban mech. This also caused critical damage to the weapons of the mech. The two Warhammers and the Centurion all take aim at one of the cooling towers and open fire. The building is huge and immobile, so the target number was quite low, and between the three mechs, they were able to dish out enough damage to bring down the cooling tower. The Chupacabras can now shoot back, and they all take aim at the damaged Purple Warhammer and opened fire. Under all that fire, the Purple Warhammer took another 5 points of damage. This removed the last of his armor and caused the loss of 3 structure points. This attack also caused 2 critical checks. One was no critical damage, and the other was its fire control. This brings turn 4 to a close. The 7th Light Cav landed in the west approaches and will start rolling their reinforcement roll next turn. Once they get a total of 12 distance, they can enter the battlefield. No mechs were lost this turn, but a cooling tower was destroyed and the Purple Warhammer took a beating. Let's get into turn 5. The Chupacabras won the initiative. First, they roll for reinforcements, rolling an 11. So close, yet not close enough. The 7th Light Cav has only 1 distance left to go, but they will certainly deploy on the west side of the map next turn. House Corbin will move and shoot first. His unit radioed for extraction, and the dropship is on the way, arriving next turn. As for his strike team, they started to fall back towards their extraction site, but they kept the raised highway between themselves and the Chupacabras to maintain cover. The Jenner in the woods stood still, maintaining its cover and control of the landing zone. It is now the Chupacabras' turn to move. Either House Corbin lost their nerve, or their objective was to cripple and not destroy the power plant. It didn't matter. The Chupacabras could tell that House Corbin was falling back to the landing zones, so they knew they had to try to overrun the landing zone and prevent their escape. Urban Mech 80 jumps towards the landing zone, causing the landing zone to become contested. Unfortunately, Urban Mech 69 was in bad shape and had to withdraw by jumping away to exit the battlefield. The 2 wheeled scouts moved down the road to get into position. Unfortunately, they couldn't get close enough to contest the LZ. With movement complete, this brings us to the shooting phase. House Corbin will shoot first, but House Corbin has a small problem. An urban mech has overrun their LZ. They can either destroy the pesky mech or change their landing zone, but the farm LZ is quite close to the fast approaching reinforcements. I realize that dropships could easily land here and crush that trash can, but for us, we like having the tactical ability to overrun a landing zone and disrupt an enemy's plan. That's why this guy is a thorn in the side of House Corbin right now. So, House Corbin's entire strike force take aim at Urban Mech 80 and fire. The target number was incredibly low, but despite the awesome display of Alpha Strike firepower, that little Urban Mech was one lucky trash can. In the end, 5 points of damage was inflicted, and not a single crit. I mean, the armor was blown completely off and the mech took 2 structure points, but it was still in the fight, had no critical damage, and more importantly, was still contesting the landing zone. The Chupacabras returned fire. The 2 wheeled scouts raked the Warhammer's rear arc, but only one managed to hit, dealing 2 structural damage, which critically damaged the mech's engine. The rest of the Chupacabras, including the defense tower, tried to finish off the Warhammer, but they missed too. The players decided to change out their dice after such poor shooting. Luckily, No one imprisoned their dice, dodging another political fiasco. This brought turn 5 to a close. The extraction zone is still contested by the Chupacabras, but the co-op farm's LZ is still open, and the dropship will land there. However, this means the LZ is right next to where the 7th Light Cav will be showing up next turn. House Corbin's Warhammers have quite a few holes in them. We'll see if the Chupacabras can take out at least a few mechs before House Corbin can escape. Let's get into turn 6. Here we are in turn 6, and Chupacabras won initiative again. House Corbin will move and shoot first. The strike force coordinates the new landing zone with the inbound dropship, and it lands in the wheat fields of the co-op farm. This is not ideal for House Corbin, because soon the League reinforcements will be entering the map, right next to their LZ, but they don't know that yet. Luckily for the strike force, most of the mechs are close enough to the co-op farm's LZ to sprint on board. The Centurion activates and without issue sprints to safety. The Jenner is one fast mech. It had enough movement to sprint out of the woods, climb the overpass, hop down on the other side of the highway, and climb aboard the dropship. The severely damaged purple Warhammer had enough movement to sprint to get aboard the dropship as well. Only the red Warhammer was not lucky enough to be within range to sprint aboard the dropship, but at least it has cover from the farmhouses and a little bit of its armor left. The Chupacabras can now move, and the 7th Light Cav rushes onto the battlefield, moving into short range of the red Warhammer and dropship. The House Corbin player was disappointed, not only because he is worried about his Warhammer, but it's the annoying 7th Light Cav and not a clan star. Remember, House Corbin is desperate for the two binaries to leave the south and redeploy in the north. The wheeled scouts, emboldened by the 7th Light Cav, move off the road to have line of sight of the red Warhammer. As for the urban mechs, they don't recall that assaulting dropships is part of their contract, so they took cover wherever they could find some. With movement complete, we go into the shooting phase. Since we don't allow dropships to fire when they first arrive, and all the mechs of the strike force had sprinted, then House Corbin doesn't have any shooting. That means the Chupacabras can open fire. They don't have enough firepower to take out a dropship, but they could still destroy some of its armor. The defense tower fires at the dropship, dealing 1 damage to its armor. What an impressive display of firepower, am I right? As for the red Warhammer, he only has 1 armor, 6 points of structure, and crossed fingers that he survives what is about to happen. The 7th Light Cav and the 2-wheeled scouts pour all their fire into the red Warhammer at short range. They did 16 points of damage to that poor mech. Sorry folks, the mech didn't make it. In turn 7, the Chupacabra player wanted to storm on board the enemy dropship. I told her, if you can roll 2 boxcars, they could try. She rolled Snake Eyes. So, I guess her mech warriors are not as crazy as she is. With the dropship lifting off, that brings the battle to a close. Both House Corbin and the Chupacabras lost 1 mech each. Both the mech warriors were recovered and hospitalized by the League. House Corbin successfully destroyed a cooling tower of the power plant. This will cause power shortages that will cause a drop in their economic points. That is potentially a major setback for the League. Only time will tell. This battle took place in late April of this year. This battle had the unintended consequences of enticing the League players to broaden the war. A plan was formed in May, finalized in June, and a military operation was set in motion in early July. The League intentionally let intelligence leak about this operation to the Vesper Marches. And if you were a Patreon member in July of this year, you might have seen all the flash messages about an invasion of a strategic asteroid. Maybe you even helped make choices for the Vesper Marches by deciding what intelligence operations to conduct. If you were a notable noble of the channel, you had the opportunity to determine the appropriate military response from the Vesper Marches. Basically, you got a taste of what the players experience in this campaign. By the way, that military operation will be taking place soon, and the battle reports from that campaign will be released shortly thereafter. So, be on the lookout for that. As for the conflict on Bluehole, that war continues to rage on. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe for more battle reports. If you want to support the channel, have a look at our Patreon or merch and see if anything fancies you. Again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next battle report.